Phrases and platitudes oftentimes block real meaning. Sloganeering, catchphrases. One of the phrases that we throw around, we hurl around too much, it loses meaning, and we don't sufficiently think about what it means. What are its contents? How do you achieve them? Is the word Achdut. How many times have we used the word Achdut without asking what does it mean? How do we achieve it? What are the different types of Achdut? So Parashat Vayechi is a great opportunity to explore different forms of Achdut. Before I explore the term of Achdut, I feel that sometimes we are a little bit too pessimistic, that we're a torn people and there's so much infighting. Look, Jews are strong-willed. Jews are very opinionated. Jews are very bright. We live in Israel, in a small country. There's a lot at stake. There's going to be differences of opinion, especially in the Ashkenazic world over the last 200 years. There just are a lot of different movements that have shaken the foundations of who we were as communities and who we were as a people and as a nation. And in our attempt to make sense of all these cataclysms and all these rapid changes, we've developed sects and groups and ideologies. But big picture, despite what we've suffered and how much we've been through over the last 200 years, we're pretty united. When I say we're pretty united, I think we as a nation, as a religion, and those are different words, obviously. There's no bloodshed, there's no civil war. Things can get hot in Eretz Yisrael, but when you look at some of the venom and anger, particularly in the Islamic world between Shiites and Sunnis, and some of the civil wars and actual bloodshed. So sometimes when I hear people bemoaning how torn and divided we are, we're Jews, we're Kshei Oref. We believe deeply in what we're saying. I think even certainly in the Orthodox world, I feel that we're far less splintered and less argumentative and less contentious than the world that I remember from 30, 40 years ago, which is very ideological. I'm a Talmud of Rabbi Soloveitchik, very devoted Talmud of Rabbi Soloveitchik, not in the direct sense. I was in his shiur towards the end of his life, or the end of his career teaching, but I learned so much from his Talmidim, and I still remember the rancorous, disrespectful, disparaging statements made about the Rav, and the words they used to describe. You don't hear it that much anymore. There's been a coalescence and a gathering together with some of the vituperative, disparaging arguments and disrespect from one class. And even in the broader world, I know that depending on where you live, fewer people have interaction with non-Orthodox, but I feel that the animosity and the hatred and the arguments, maybe I live on an ivory tower or on an idealistic hilltop, but I feel that we create fiction sometimes of a splintered, fighting, contentious people, and it can become self-fulfilling if that's the way you see your world, because perception is reality. But we still want to reach levels of Achdut that remain elusive, and we still believe that the more Achdut we achieve, the quicker Mashiach will come, and the quicker Hashem Echad Ushmo Echad will be coronated in this world. So, what is Achdut? How do you achieve Achdut? Well, what does this have to do with Parashat Vayechi? Because in Parashat Vayechi, you finally have a coming together, an assembly of people who are different, but are all included, and are all in sync with one another, which has been elusive for all of Sefer Bereshis, because all of Sefer Bereshis has been marked and marred by selection, be it Yitzchak being selected from Yishmael, Yaakov being selected from Esav, and the specter of selection hovering above the brothers leads to rivalry and jockeying and betrayal and crime. And now all the 12 children of Yaakov are gathered as one. And it's not just something which occurs, but it's something which the Torah stresses linguistically. Yaakov gathers the troops. There's an asifa. That's a word that's been in very short supply in Sefer Bereshis. Asvu. Kavtzu v'shemu b'nei Yaakov. Gather together. So this is a assembly. This is a moment of gathering. This is people who are different, but are united by one purpose and one set of interests. So Parashat Vayechi is the Parsha, is the Shabbos of Achdut. So what is Achdut? How do you achieve it? So I like to call Achdut a ladder. Namely, there are different rungs, and the higher you walk on that ladder, the more elegant and the more powerful and compelling the Achdut. But they're different rungs, and they have to be distinguished as such. So to me, the lowest rung on the ladder of Achdut, but one which is still impressive, and if you're able to reach that, is what I call the tolerance rung, where you're someone who sees differences in people that you're close with. In this case, other Jews. It could be people that you're close with through friendship, through family, and they exhibit differences from you. They could be personality differences, the way they eat, the way they breathe, the way they talk, the way they comb their hair, or they could be deeply ideological issues, and you don't agree with them, but you're tolerant, and tolerant takes mental strength, tolerance, mental strength, and emotional strength. Sometimes it just takes the ability to look away. Sometimes if we look away from things, literally, we just don't pay attention to them. We try to shield our eyes and our experiences from them. We don't let our curiosity get the better of us. We don't need to know everything. Sometimes shielding yourself from issues that cause you pain, from disagreements that cause you pain, it feels cowardly, because we're a culture of confrontation, and we're a culture of encounter, we're a culture of not running away from ideas, but sometimes just looking away. When in the V'chol Maminim Tefillah, which we recite on Rosh Yom Kippur, V'chol Maminim, which is oriented around the Aleph base, so the Samach part, the letter Samach, Hasovel, Uma'alim Ayin Misorim. Hashem is the ultimate savlan. Hashem has the tolerance to accept and to tolerate and to hold our failures without immediately punishing or sentencing us for our failures. And at least the way he's described is Ma'alim Ayin Misarim. He averts eyes, he ignores, he neglects to pay attention. So sometimes tolerance is strength of character, sometimes tolerance is looking away, sometimes it's knowing things but training your mind not to fixate or obsess about issues. It's not just what you see and what information you process, but how it settles in your mind, how it settles in your consciousness. Sometimes ideas go through our mind and we allow it to move out of our mind, and we allow our minds to focus on other things or not to obsess. And when we really get angry at people that are different from us, we find ourselves fixating or being preoccupied. And how can you train your mind to let go and to just allow people to have space, which is one of the secrets of relationships, not just in the ideological theater or in the ideological arena. It's a little bit easier in Chutz La'aretz, I think, to tolerate, because in Chutz La'aretz there's more space, there are more resources. So everyone can find their own corner, their own shul, their own shtibel. There's enough money to go around to build schools, communities, institutions. If you're a Skver Chassid, you'll move to Skver Town. If you're a Satmar, you'll move to Williamsburg. And if you're a Lubavitch, you'll move to Crown Heights. And so in smaller towns, there's less resources for individualization or cantonization. And everyone has to share the one kosher restaurant and the one mikvah and the one. But in larger Jewish communities, there's enough space. When I say space, I mean geographical space, homes, institutions, buildings, and of course resources. Eretz Yisrael is a small country, and we don't have the same resources. We have to share. I remember a long time ago, a Talmud was in yeshiva, and we were davening at the Kotel on Shabbos, and you always know there's a fight for chairs because there's a limited amount of chairs, and one of the Talmidim accidentally, unintentionally took a chair for a different minyan, and the person for that minyan was very upset, and this Talmud was very defensive about the chair he had taken, and it got to the point that they almost were brought to violence with one another. We interceded, we stopped, we calmed things down, and the student was legitimately very disturbed. This is Eretz Yisrael, this is the holy ground, and this is the Kotel, and I tried to explain that there's really only one Kotel, and everyone has to learn how to share it. And in this case, it was something very trivial and logistical, such as sharing a chair. And I think it's really metaphoric. We're looking for ideas to unify a broad range of Jews in Israel, many of whom are not religious, many of whom are biblical, as I call them. I don't like to use the word traditional because that has a lot of different connotations. I like the word biblical. People who believe that our lives here in this country are a continuation of divine selection as recorded in the Bible and divine prophecies as recorded in the Bible. So for Orthodox Jews, the next step is, yes, and part of the Bible is divine revelation, Torah study, and mitzvah observance. But for some people, they feel that, or either they feel or they're just not attending to it, but they haven't given up on the Bible, they haven't given up on prophecies, they haven't given up on Malchus Hashem. So I call them biblical Jews. It's a broad range of Jews, and there's so few elements in this country that unite us. And to me, it's so sad that the Kotel can't become a unifying force. I understand the issue because I want it to be a national monument and a national, not shrine, but a national icon, because it does evoke powerful feelings in Jews across the spectrum. On the other hand, it's a Makam Tefillah. As a Makam Tefillah, there are certain rules and guidelines that have to govern positioning and behavior and who holds the Torah and all sorts, whether it's based on halacha, whether it's based on Masar. Right now, that's not important. Those two goals, each of which are important, clash, and of course, halacha can never be suspended. And I would hope there could be some way to create space at the Kotel for Jews who don't feel submissive or beholden to the halachos of tefillah to still feel that they have a legitimate place. And it's not easy to pull off. And I'm not clocking with an opinion. I'm just clocking with a wish. So the first rung on the ladder of Achdus is the rung of tolerance. And tolerance is strength of character. It takes a strong personality to tolerate whatever it is, insult or disagreement or people that are different from you. It takes discretion, what to pay attention to, what not to pay attention to. It takes mental discipline, what to fixate upon, what not to fixate upon, what not just to notice or not to notice, but how tenaciously do we latch onto something, and can we just let go and as a Chassidus would say, be misbatel and let go of something. The next ladder, or the next rung on this ladder, actually stems from Rashi. After the brachos are distributed, the Torah writes, Ish asher kibirchasa birachosam. So it seems redundant. Of course, Moshe would deliver each person's individual bracha. So the Archaim HaKadosh actually says that the Torah is stressing that Moshe, in this case Yaakov and Moshe in Parshas V'zasa Bracha, were very deliberate about delivering brachos, and they calibrated the brachos based on people's natural predilection, their behavior, how they are as people. Moshe and Yaakov didn't just, in this case Yaakov, didn't just distribute brachos nonchalantly, indiscriminately, but they thought, what are Reuven's characteristics, what are Shimon's characteristics, which you would expect. You would expect the brachos to be collective and in general and unintentional and purposeless. But Rashi says that after he delivered specific brachos to specific children, he then delivered all the brachos to all of them. And Rashi can't mean that Yaakov then shuffled the deck of cards and this gave everyone a free deck of cards. If in the beginning you were the ace of spades and you were the king of hearts and you were the seven of diamonds, and then he says, you know what, everyone take every card. That would have rendered the deliberate bracha allocation as being irrelevant if everyone got everyone else's bracha. What I think Rashi means is that when they live together as an asifa, when they live together as a kavutza, and they recognize the value of spiritual specialization and spiritual differences, and then not every person can cover every single agenda. And certainly even communities can't cover every agenda. And they realize that it takes a team to cover the totality of either a communal agenda, a familial agenda, a national agenda. And to me, I call that rung the rung of cross-pollination, where you realize that people are different, communities are different, and when they work in unison, everyone benefits from each other's brachas, as if I received your bracha. I don't receive your bracha, but by living in a complementary fashion, I benefit from your bracha. And that, to me, is the second level of tolerance, where you appreciate the values and the traits that other people can provide for you, even when you differ with them and from them, and even when those differences are very deeply ideological. And for years, when Orthodox Jews spoke about this, in their better moments, it was about people who were not classically observant. And Achdus is not a synonym for Kiruv. Achdus means living with people, the second rung, and saying, what can I appreciate about, for example, Jews in Israel who are biblical Jews, who are deeply committed, deeply passionate, may not keep halacha in the strict way that we believe halacha should be adhered to, in many cases, but not all of them, Sephardic Jews who have a deep commitment to tradition and to their heritage. And what can we learn from them about chesed? What can we learn from them about kibbud avayim? What can we learn from them about family ties? What can we learn from them about kavod Torah in ways they may not be people who are sitting and learn all day, but the respect they have for rabbis, sometimes the Ashkenazi Torah world can emulate. Real respect, deep, authentic respect. What can we learn from the secular world that is driven by values? I think it's untrue. And it's disrespectful to just dismiss that world. There are deep values in that world, and what values can we learn? And I think a lot of people listening to this year, and it's not a topic that I'm talking about in this year, but let's say for argument's sake, you believe that everyone should be conscripted into the army, and you feel that it's inappropriate that people are not serving the army. Can you say, I disagree with that decision, but how can I appreciate the values that come from that world and people that have made decisions I disagree with? And I imagine if I were speaking to someone who didn't send his children to battle and wasn't involved in the world that I'm involved in, I would flip the question around. What can I learn from those who do serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and their minds serving in the army and protecting our people and our land is a mitzvah of the highest order? And maybe someone would disagree with that, but what can I learn from those people, and how can their lives cross-pollinate mine? And I think our world is becoming very polarized, very binary. If you're on the right side of the aisle, I don't mean right versus left, but the correct side of the aisle, then I agree with everything you say. And if you're on the other side of the aisle, I disagree reflexively with everything you say. And it's true at every level to appreciate specialization, that people have different strengths and different talents. And leadership is promoting different people's talents rather than imposing you and your ideas and your will upon them, because it always stifles growth and stifles personality. And living together, and that rung of Achdut is not the Achdut of tolerance, but the Achdut of symbiosis, the Achdut of cross-pollination, the Achdut of synchronicity. And then to me, there's a highest level of Achdut, and that's the Achdut that isn't described specifically in the pasuk in Parashat Vayechi, but is filled in by the Gemara in Pesachim. The Gemara in Pesachim says that this was the first time that Kriya Shema was recited. Yaakov, fearing that some of his children were no longer aligned with the legacy and the mission of the Jewish people and the belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, asks his children, because he assumes that there's got to be an Esav out there, there's got to be a Yishmael out there, and all the tumult surrounding the family probably reinforced this presumption. And he asks his children, and they all respond, no, Abba, we're all in. And they're speaking to their father through his new name, Yisrael, and they say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And they create an Achdus that is theological. Now, how does monotheism and theology and the transcendence of Hashem create Achdus? If you fully understand the incomprehensibility of Hashem, and that no human mind can fully grasp the total sweep of Hashem, and you realize that everyone's approach and everyone's truth is only a partial truth. So when you see other people who are finding their way to serve Hashem, you don't immediately discredit it, but you realize your way, and as passionate as you are about your way, and as comfortable as you are in your way, and your derech and your Talmud Torah, your way is not the only way. There can't just be one way. And whenever I hear people saying this is the emes, I know it's probably, I hope it's just a kishagaga hayotze mipi ashalin, as we say. It's like a mistake that happens to slip out of the mind or the tongue of someone who normally controls their words carefully. There is no derech to serve Hashem. That word, that's almost bordering on avodah zarah. To suggest that the human mind can humanize Hashem and shrink avodah Hashem into one derech, and that Hashem is capable of being grasped, again, it's not avodah zarah in the literal sense, but it's the same premise. Less machshava d'tfisa beklal. The human mind can't grasp the Rabbanu Shalom. Every single person, based on their masara, based on the teaching, based on the comprehension, crafts a derech that they feel comfortable with. I love the derech that I try to serve Hashem through. It's not perfect because I'm a flawed person, but I know I've seen it live close to perfection. I feel comfortable saying that this is the derech of avodas Hashem that I feel is my derech. I don't look at other drachim and feel jealous, or there are aspects I emulate, there are aspects I wish I could duplicate. But if I got this derech that I've chosen for myself in my life, that I've seen live to its fullest the right way, I would feel like that for me is the ultimate. But I have to have enough intellectual humility to realize that no one person, as great as they are, and no one community, as thoughtful as it is, can fully encompass HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And to me, that's the true sign of someone that absorbs and understands Das Elyon, Das Hashem, intellectual humility, which then leads to personal humility, and the ability to be passionate, but also rational. Passion means you love something so deeply you can't imagine anything else. Rational means, but you realize there could be other loves and other perspectives and other people with different passions. And similarly, I think this comes to the foremost. This is why so deeply, and I miss it so dearly, because for the last 2 months I haven't had the time or the resources to learn Gemara B'Iyun. It's just been studying Taragin and Daf Yomi and preparing shirim and writing. I just haven't had the time to prepare shir and to give shir and to learn. But the world of Lamdus and the world of Shas, it's not binary, and people think that all these machloksin and Shas represent a deterioration of the Masar, that Harsin Hashem told Moshe one truth, and that one truth held its unitary reality for generations until people became lazy and they forgot the truth. And it's so untrue. And Harsin Hashem told Moshe, this item is both Tameh and Tahor. And there are 49 ways, logical flowcharts, to achieve a conclusion of Tumah. And there are 49 memtes panim, memtes drachim, memtes she'arim, to achieve the opposite conclusion, that it's tahor. And human beings have binary mental processors, so for them it can only be one or the other. But for Hashem, Yotzer Or Varei Choshech Oseh Shalom U'Vares HaKol. For Hashem, multiple truths can be correct. And don't ask me to explain it to you, because I'm a human being. But one day when you escape the limitations of human experience, you realize the concept of divine multiple truths being complementary truths, coexistent truths. And even in halacha, there is built-in pluralism. If you go back before the codification of the Shulchan Aruch, you can live in France and make Havdalah one way, and you can live in, in Spain and make Havdalah another way, or Kiddush, or Lulav, or Dina Tumah V'Tara, Dina Nida, or Matzah. For whatever reason, the Shulchan Aruch had to standardize and codify halacha. The pressures of Galus were too strong. Halacha had to be homogenized and uniformized and standardized. But when you study Shas, you're looking at the more primal, primitive, not primitive that is non-developed, is super sophisticated, but the truest representation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's non-binary, multiple, coexistent truths, and every position is true. We have to paskin halacha. Ultimately, every human being is one-dimensional, and they have to apply the halacha in a particular context. But again, before the Shulchan Aruch, people were freer to apply the halacha as they saw fit. And similarly, when someone says, this is the derech to study Torah, it's a comical statement. It really is. There's so many different ways to learn HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. Each person picks a derech. For instance, this is my derech. This is a derech I feel is the best way to study, to appreciate, to study for a host of different reasons. And we could use a little more of that. We could use a little more of intellectual humility that comes from fully grasping Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's a tough period in history to live, and we become trapped by these labels of modern orthodoxy, and yeshivish, and Haredi, and Kavnik, and Gushnik, and who knows what. And 200 years ago, none of these labels existed. 200 years from now, they'll all be relics of history. We're living at a very unique moment in history where there's been a lot of ideological confusion, a lot of destabilizing events, particularly in the Ashkenazic world, and people have grouped together to process the Holocaust, to process the state of Israel, to process secularization, to process modernity, rapid modernization. And they've created movements that help make sense of them. But these are passing ships in the night. These are passing phases and fads, and everyone has a way to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why they finally reach that higher and highest rung of Achdut when they're all Mekabel Malchus Shemayim. So Reuven is saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu one way, and Yehuda is saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu another. But those saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And of course, Hashem's Echad doesn't just mean that he's exclusive. Echad also means he's indivisible. And of course, that's why he's different, because nothing in this world is indivisible. The wood that you're seeing behind me can be broken up into molecules. The person you see in front of you can be broken into conscious and subconscious. Everything in this world can be divided into smaller parts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is indivisible, and that's what makes him different and incomprehensible. So by saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Echad, you're essentially saying it's a phenomena Hashem's not a phenomenon, he's a being, but the phenomenon of indivisibility is a reflection of Hashem's incomprehensibility, because I don't know anything that can't be subdivided. So they're all saying, we can't fully understand Hashem, but we're all going to be Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So to me, those are the three rungs of the Achdus ladder. The first rung is the rung of tolerance. The second rung is the rung of symbiosis, cross-pollination. And the third rung is the rung of intellectual humility that stems from grasping the indecipherability and the immutability is a bad word, the indecipherability and the inscrutability of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you try your best and you come up with your partial view, but you allow space for other people to have other views. Shabbat Shalom, Chazak Chazak, V'nischazek.